The good news.
But not everyone agrees. Dr. Michael Shermer is the publisher of Skeptic magazine and the author of a string of bestsellers, including Why People Believe Weird Things and The Believing Brain. He spent 6 weeks in Dr. Doubletree's program in an attempt to expose what he calls pure, unadulterated silliness.
I mean, the whole thing was just silly. They had me wearing jewelry, pierced my ear, I was drinking Cosmopolitans and wearing Calvin Klein jeans, and 6 weeks of watching episodes of Glee and True Blood and Lord of the Rings trilogy. I mean, I'm still completely straight.
Unfortunately, says Dr. Shermer, silly isn't the worst that can be said of Doubletree's therapy.
I think they're making people feel bad or feeling like they're limiting themselves, not connecting with what God wants for their lives, simply because they're leading a strictly heterosexual lifestyle is, well, it's destructive, it's misleading. I mean, I didn't choose to be a heterosexual, did you?
No.
I mean, not to imply that you're heterosexual or anything like that.
No, that's fine.
Are you, you know, doing anything later tonight?
Well, I don't ever recall making a choice to be heterosexual.
Because you didn't, David. Society made that choice for you by forcing you to suppress your own innate natural desire for a person of your own gender, in your case, men.
I have no natural desire for other men.
So Brad Pitt, George Clooney, they just do nothing for you?
Nothing.
Well, you know, David, you're a pretty good-looking guy yourself. I mean, are you telling me that you've never looked in the mirror at that jawline, that chiseled physique, and suddenly found yourself at half-staff?
Half-staff?
You've never seen a really good-looking guy on the street and had to fight the urge to walk up to him and say, I want you inside me?
Doctor, I mean no offense to you or anyone in our audience by this, but quite frankly, I find that question disgusting.
Okay. But what can I say? You know, in the end, David, methinks thou doth protest too much. So that's a fun series we're going to start doing, and they're not going to be all that. We have all kinds of interesting things already. We're going to be doing something on one of our next 2 projects is going to be on teaching the controversy, which is what they're pushing now. The intelligent design people, creationists, want to teach the controversy in classrooms. So we're going to have some fun with that. Now, very quickly, I was asked to come here and speak about the value of atheism. It was not a talk that I had given before, so I had to give it some thought. And I took a lot of time on this. I thought to myself, what is the value of atheism? It didn't hit me immediately. And then I realized, I don't know. Thank you. It's always good to get the cheap applause. And then it hit me, that really is the value of atheism, because people have a misunderstanding of what atheism is. Atheism is a very simple thing, basically. It's the idea that you don't have a belief in any god or gods. It doesn't really add anything beyond that. There's nothing that is necessarily implied or can be inferred from the fact that anyone is an atheist. You can be an atheist and a very spiritualist, kind of woo-woo type of person who believes in unicorns or fairies or reparative therapy even. So, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean anything about you to say that you're an atheist. It doesn't, I mean, a lot of times it turns out this way, but it doesn't necessarily imply, for instance, anything about your politics, anything about your values. But there is one thing that I think it does imply, and that's probably, I think, one of the most important things in the history of ideas, and that is a willingness to say, I don't know. Now, a lot of people call that agnosticism. You know, a friend of mine once said, agnostics, what do people burn on their lawns? A question mark? But really, atheism is not that there, I mean, you can't say there is no God. We definitely know there is no God. That just can't be said. We don't know. So there's nothing beyond we don't know that you can say about it. This is called the argument from ignorance. This is what literally all of religion rests on. If you look at the arguments for God and God's existence, they all come down to we don't know something, therefore there must be a God. In the early days of man and thinking, these went into basic physical processes like the weather. Those who are still pretty much as ignorant as they were 4,000 years ago still think that the weather has something to do with God. Let me play these for you real quick. These are always fun. If you haven't seen these, this is the kind of stuff that you can do and say. And this is how, I hate to use the term ignorant, but it's simply ignorant. This is how ignorant you can become when you assume you know something that you really don't. You have no idea about, but you like to think you do. This is the way people talk. Even today, in 2011, people will talk about the weather or natural phenomenon in this way.
The earth itself will respond to the actions of man. In other words, if man sins, the earth will respond. If man is righteous, the earth responds. Its desire, its ultimate desire, is to release tremendous blessing. That's the way the earth was designed. So God's always speaking to us through nature, but because sometimes we have this Greco-Roman philosophical view rather than a Hebraic Bible view, we don't see it that way. We've not been taught how to interpret what God is saying through nature.
Yeah, and it's not really that God is wanting, he doesn't want bad things to happen, just he has set up law. If you do this, this will happen. If you do this, this will happen. Because he's the creator. He owns the earth. He owns everything in the world. He created you. He created me. He created us. He set up laws and the way things have to function. When we break these laws, whether we think we have a right to do whatever we want, we don't have a right. And so what happens is that, that biblically the earth literally, some translations say gets frustrated. It begins to groan. And so what do? We have to pray. This is the time to tell people about Jesus. God is a...
That's about enough of her. That's about all I can say. It's hard to take her. By the way, I got that creepy grin that you saw in Way of the Mr. basically from her. She has that one line where she says something and gives that really creepy smile. Here's another one. This is really one of my favorites. I mean, it doesn't get better than this.
It is a spirit called a harlot, a principality, who dominates nations, who dominates territories, who dominates people groups, very, very clearly, to such an extent that she has fornication with kings. I can give you an example of how she does this. Japan, as a nation, is one of the nations of the world which has consciously, openly invited national demonization. The sun goddess visits him in person and has sexual intercourse with the emperor. It's a very, very powerful thing. So the emperor becomes one flesh with the sun goddess. And that's an invitation for the sun goddess to continue to demonize the whole nation. Since the night that the present emperor slept with the sun goddess, the stock market in Japan has gone down.
I don't even know where people come up with this stuff. That's the most amazing thing to me. There's so much that we don't know. We don't know anything about the supernatural realm. There's never been any solid evidence that anything has anything to do with the supernatural realm. There's never been any solid evidence that there's anything to a god or gods or the demonic world, anything you want to... But this guy's got it all figured out. I don't know how he... is he connected up with the National Enquirer that he knows this information about the Emperor of Japan? That he had sex with the sun goddess? Where does he find this stuff? I don't know, but obviously he's talking to people who believe it. Now, the thing that I think is so valuable is saying, I don't know. I don't know that there is no supernatural realm. I don't know that whether there is a God or not. But what I'm fairly certain of is that neither do you. And neither does Jerry Falwell or Pat Robertson or Joseph Smith or any of his followers or any of the people who wrote the Gospels or the Book of Mormon or the Quran or the Hebrew Bible. When I was a theist, And I used to be, I was extremely religious. I grew up kind of in this bland world between my mother and my father.